speaker session for the Summer Learning Academy. Let's just take a moment and kind of revel in that. Like, wow, we've had so many phenomenal speakers, right? For the past 4 weeks, they've poured into me as I know they've poured into you. They've given us tips and tricks for how to deal with quarantine, how to have a mindset of success, how to move forward and navigate our lives. It's been such great content. I say this every single day, but I cannot stress it enough. They have been so phenomenal and instrumental, I know, in my life, and so I'm pretty sure that it's been for the same for all of you. And today will be no different. Closing us out, we have Molly Bloom talking about a mindset for success. And I'm so excited to hear from her. She has a great story, and you guys have already been asking a number of questions on social media, so I won't take too much more time so we can get into the conversation. Before we begin, as always, we have a giveaway. We've been thanking you all for joining us on all of these live broadcasts with these awards and prizes for the past couple weeks. And so here is our prize winners for our last speaker session of the Learning Academy. Who do we have? Congratulations go to Heather of Brookdale, Leonard from Columbia University, Alondra from the University of Texas, Joanna from Texas Wesleyan, and Keith from Villanova. Congratulations. And as always, be sure to check your email so you can figure out how you'll get your prizes in the mail. Be looking out for that email and communications from our Summer Learning Academy team. As you all know, your questions are on social media, and today you'll receive a free copy of Molly's book, Molly's Game, if your question is selected for our Q&A portion of our conversation today. So let's learn a little bit about Molly. She is an inspirational keynote speaker, entrepreneur, and best-selling author. She is best known for her memoir, Molly's Game, which was adapted into an award-winning film of the same name by Aaron Sorkin. Bloom's memoir chronicles her journey from college student to LA waitress to building and operating the largest and most notorious poker game in the world. She has appeared on numerous shows and media outlets such as Ellen and Vice, the Los Angeles Times, NPR, Vulture. She's also been asked to speak at Fortune's Most Powerful Women for companies like BlackRock Financial, Dell, Google, SiriusXM, Radio, and Uber. And she also delivered the 2018 commencement speech at Colorado State University. She has an extraordinary story of resilience and overcoming setbacks, and we're thrilled to have her speak today. Molly, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me? Are we all good?
Yeah, we can hear you just fine. Take it away.
Hi, everyone. Oh, wow. Have you been through it this year? I commend you, and I'm super excited to be here and to be part of this Learning Academy this summer. When AT&T asked me to be part of the Summer Learning Academy, I didn't take it lightly. This is an important ask. And what I wanted to do is I sat down and I thought about this. I wanted to give you all information that I would have wanted to know at your age. And so, things like what are the secrets to a life well lived, success, and happiness. And I started writing, and there were just so many things. I was like, this is going to take a full semester, and I only have like 30 minutes. So what I did is I boiled it down to what I believe to be the most important piece of information I could give you. And what I want to impart to you is something that's going to give you the biggest competitive edge in life and the best shot to live a wonderful, successful, and happy life. And so what I want to talk about here is how do we become powerful? How do we tap into this power by training our minds? And I want to go through that and have that discussion and talk about real practical application and exercises we can do to tap into this limitless power of our own minds. But I'll get to that in a second. First, I want to just kind of tell you my story. For those of you that don't know who I am, or for those of you that have seen the movie and need a little bit of a refresher. So I was born in a really small town in Colorado to this family of extremely high achievers. My youngest brother is an Olympic athlete who played in the NFL, and my middle brother is a Harvard-educated cardiothoracic surgeon. And from a really young age, I knew I wanted to go to the Olympics in skiing. And I trained really hard, and unfortunately at 12 years old, I was diagnosed with a very severe case of scoliosis. And the doctors sat me down and said, you're going to have to get this crazy surgery. We're going to rebuild your back, put metal rods all over the place, fuse your entire spine together, and your ski career is over. So I got the surgery, and I spent that year alone for the most part. My family was skiing on the weekends, and I was homeschooled because I had to basically just lay flat and let those fusions heal. And during that time, I cultivated what I would call a very strong relationship with myself. And I really thought about what the doctors and the experts and everyone had said. And I believed in my gut that I could be back on the mountain. And so that's what I did. And for the next however many years, I trained really hard. And at 19, I made the U.S. ski team. At 20, I was ranked 3rd overall in North America. And at 21, I made it to the Olympic qualifiers. Unfortunately, the qualifiers didn't go as I wanted it to go. I crashed pretty hard, and so hard, in fact, it was the end of my ski career. I was at my last year at the University of Colorado. Go Buffs, if anyone's on here. And I decided I just needed to take a year off, just to kind of regroup. My heart was pretty broken. And so I went to Los Angeles just for a little time off. And I ended up working 30 jobs, and one of them was a waitress, and I was asked to waitress at this poker game. And I thought it was just going to be a regular poker game. And then walked in, politicians and A-list actors like Ben Affleck and Leonardo DiCaprio, and heads of the biggest investment banks and heads of the biggest movie studios, and one after another, just these people that moved the needle on the world stage. And I saw a real opportunity here. If I could own this game, I could create this insane network and have access to information and capital and power. And so I started my own games, and I ran this business for 7 years, both in New York and in LA. I was making millions of dollars, $4 to $5 million a year, paying my taxes, doing everything on the up and up. And something happened to me around the 6th year where I just got really caught up in everything, and kind of greed and money and power. It started to just have its way with me, and I started making some really bad choices. And I ended up getting in a lot of trouble for those choices. I got arrested by the FBI. 17 FBI agents arrested me at gunpoint, and I was federally indicted. And it was a terrible, terrible time in my life. And I sat down to meet with the prosecutors, and what they really wanted me to do is they wanted me to be a confidential informant and kind of tell on all the people, the celebrities and the Wall Street people and the politicians, to tell the prosecutors what I knew about them. And ultimately what I decided to do was just stand for my own consequences and not bring anyone else down. And I got fortunate. I didn't have to go to jail, but here I was, okay, and this is kind of where my story starts. 35 years old, millions of dollars in debt. My story is being told by the tabloids in a pretty terrible and reductive way. I am now a convicted felon, and it's pretty disastrous. And from there, I remember thinking, this is a terrible spot to be, but I need to get out of it. And so I fought back, and I ended up writing my own story, telling my story my way, published a book. And then I brought that book to Hollywood, and there were a lot of people that said, don't even bother. No one's ever going to make this movie. They're all terrified of the powerful people that don't want the story to get told. But, this was my story, and this was my shot. And so I just decided to forge ahead. And I made my way to Aaron Sorkin. Now, Aaron Sorkin is my favorite writer. He wrote The West Wing, Social Network. He just wrote To Kill a Mockingbird for Broadway. And I loved his writing. And if you're going to let someone write your story other than yourself, it should be someone like Aaron Sorkin, right? So I kept bothering people until I finally got to him. And, I lucked out, and he liked the story. So I always say 5 years ago, I was pleading guilty in federal court, but a couple years ago, I got to go to the Oscars. So there is a second chance always, and there's a reinvention. But in order to kind of keep getting back up, like I did after skiing, after, there was ups and downs owning that business. I lost everything and then had to restart, et cetera. And to finally, being in the situation where it seems like you're completely finished, it takes an extraordinary amount of mind control, of this ability to pick back up and start again. And I believe that's all about, or at least mostly about, mindset. So I want to get to that now. How do we become powerful? How do we harness that power of our minds? Well, first, I want to talk about what the unharnessed or untrained mind looks like. And I think this will be familiar for all of us. It's often filled with anxiety and fear for no reason. It compares our lives to others. It fills us with doubt about our abilities. Within this untrained mind lives a pretty harsh personal critic from time to time. Furthermore, the mind is really bad at taking our instruction. You tell yourself to study and you find yourself on social media. You tell yourself to exercise and eat better and not drink too much and not respond out of anger. And so often the mind just doesn't listen, and you find yourself in these places that you're trying to avoid. So in so many ways, we are just simply powerless over our own minds. And people say things like, make a to-do list, or have more willpower, or just breathe, have more gratitude, and so on. And you know what? Asking the untrained mind to overcome its impulses is like asking me to get on the high dive and do a triple gainer. It's never going to happen. I don't know how to do it. I've never trained. So don't feel discouraged if you haven't been able to break the habits, make better choices, overcome the fears, get on the exercise regime, leave the toxic relationship, read the book, write the paper, etc. You aren't weak and undisciplined. You just haven't trained the mind properly. So before we go any further, I want to give you some science for all you skeptics out there whose logical brains just completely tuned me out when I said, train the mind. And so let me back up for 1 second. So what I want to talk about before we get to the science of this is, what are the best tools for training the mind? And to me, through my experience and through my research, it is meditation and mindfulness. So meditation and mindfulness sometimes get this bad reputation of being this woo-woo practice, and certainly it couldn't be farther from the truth. So the science I want to cite, there's tons of studies out there that show that meditation and mindfulness is incredibly powerful and profound in changing the brain. But there's one study in particular that I found really compelling. They did this study at Harvard, and they took a group of people and they conducted brain scans. And they looked at those brain scans. And then they had the same group of people engage in an 8-week meditation mindfulness course. At the end of this course, they reran the brain scans. And what they found was a significant change in a lot of people's brains. And what they found specifically was the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of the brain that is responsible for logical decision-making, executive planning, problem solving. It's the part of the brain that's associated with happiness. They found an increase in gray matter in that part of the brain. And then in the amygdala, which is the part of the brain that's responsible for fear, anxiety, worry, it's connected with depression, they found a decrease in gray matter. So I think that's pretty compelling. So if meditation and mindfulness are the tools to train the mind to tap into power, the next question is, how do we do it? Now, a disclaimer here. I am not a meditation master by any means. What I am is somebody who has experienced extraordinary benefits from this practice. There are many different types of meditation out there, and that's something that I encourage you all to explore. But because I'm here for 30 minutes with you all and I get to teach you something, I'm going to teach you how I meditate. So do me a favor and close your eyes. And I want you to take a deep breath in and then a breath out. And on your next breath, I want you to actively place your focus on your breath, on the in-breath and the out-breath. And do that a couple times for me. Now, as you're doing this, if thoughts come in, and they will, if you do it long enough, they will, it's okay. Just refocus back on the breath each time. It's kind of like reading a book. When you're reading, your mind wanders and you find yourself in this mental reverie, just gently bring it back. It's the same sort of muscle. So that's it to start. It's pretty simple. We don't stop thoughts. We can't. We are just training the mind not to get hooked and caught on them. And what we're actually doing here is learning to control our minds. I see meditation as the gym for mind control. So my advice to those of you who want to try this is to start small. When I first started in meditation, I started 1 minute the first day. The next day, I built to 2 minutes, and so on until I got to my goal. I try to meditate for 20 minutes a day, every day. I also think it's easiest and best to do it first thing in the morning before the crazy of the day starts, but that's up to you. The key is consistency. Here are the changes that empirical research has demonstrated with many individuals who practice from 10 to 20 minutes a day. People begin to feel calmer, happier, kinder, more patient. They experience less anxiety and depression. They're able to focus better, get better sleep, feel less angry, manage their anger, experience a sharper and smarter mind, experience a more honed intuition, have less fatigue, and the critical voice in your head becomes something you can turn off. You feel braver, more disciplined, and the list goes on. I'll tell you the first time I really knew meditation had changed my brain. So it was during the awards season for Molly's Game, and I was asked to write a speech, deliver it, and present Aaron Sorkin, the writer of the movie, with the award. And I had never heard of this award show. You know, we were going to the Golden Globes and the Oscars, and I had never heard of this particular one. So I thought it was just going to be like a luncheon, you know? And I show up, and there's red carpet. Pretty much all of A-list Hollywood is there, and it's televised. And to make matters worse, they told me I was going to follow Helen Mirren, who was delivering her Lifetime Achievement Award. And if you don't know who Helen Mirren is, she's one of the most venerable, prolific actors of our time. And I've never spoken publicly before, and certainly not at an event of this magnitude. So soon it's my turn, and they call me backstage, and I'm standing backstage, and I see the audience, and I feel like I'm going to pass out. You know, I start to have real panic. I'm breathing heavy, and I'm, you know, the ice water through the veins, like panic, real panic attack. So I go into this corner, and I start to just focus on the breath, like I had been doing in meditation for some time, and then I was able to stabilize my mind on the breath, and completely bring my nervous system down and get clarity in my mind. And then this thought popped into my head, you know, maybe this isn't about you, Molly. Maybe this isn't about what you look like, or if people are going to like your speech. Maybe this is your opportunity to show some gratitude to Aaron Sorkin, who wrote this movie about you. And up until that point, that's not the way my brain was wired. Okay, my brain is wired around what are people thinking, and I'm full of anxiety, and I'm full of self, and you know, I went out onto that stage, and I was in a zone, and I nailed it. And the cool thing is, you know, this is the kind of zone that entrepreneurs and athletes and artists and pretty much anyone who's trying to do anything dreams about. And the cool thing is, the amazing thing is, I was able to get myself there from a place of total panic. And it wasn't a one-off or a fluke. I can use this muscle that you build in meditation, this management and control over your own mind, to get myself there time and time again. So now to mindfulness. So mindfulness also has many definitions and applications. My version of it takes this practice of awareness that you learn in meditation and couples it with value setting and action. So here's what that looks like. Just take a minute to think about who you want to be in the world and what you want to accomplish. For instance, my list is I want to be courageous, kind, honest, accountable. I want my name and my word to mean something. I want to be forgiving of myself and others. I want to be successful, and I want to be of service in the world. So I make this list, right? And I have this list. It takes about 15 seconds. I look at this list every single morning after meditation. And that takes about 10 seconds. I can add things if need be, if there are things I'm working on that week. And in the beginning, I set reminders or alarms on my phone that, reminds me of these things. And throughout the day, I stay aware of these values and goals, and I try to make choices aligned with them. For instance, if my goal is to be unselfish, I make sure I'm doing selfless acts throughout the day. If my goal is to become more courageous, when I feel myself in fear, I recognize and walk through it. Unless, of course, it's something that's really dangerous, like taking on the mob, and then please don't do that. Please pay attention to fear. Anyway, so at the end of the day, and when I veer from this, when I mess up, when I do something selfish, I don't beat myself up over it. I simply realign with the values, and I learn the lesson. At the end of the day, I go over my day, and I look at how I did. This takes about 30 seconds. And this shows me what I need to work on. And what happens if I do this consistently? I actually start to change my brain structurally. You guys can look at this. You might know about the theory of neuroplasticity, that the brain is always changing, and that we can have a hand in that. And it's a super fascinating area of study. But you actually start to change your brain, and your thoughts and actions change as well, and you start to become the things on this list. Unfortunately, I didn't learn these practices until later in life. And to be honest, I learned them because I completely burned my life to the ground. I was in such a bad place, you guys. I was ashamed, when all this stuff went down, when I got in trouble and when I got federally indicted. It was a terrible time in my life. And it was all my fault. I was afraid. I was ashamed. I was so worried of what people thought about me, what they were writing about me in the tabloids and on social media. I was millions of dollars in debt, a convicted felon, and I felt desperately powerless. I needed to flip the script or it was game over, So I did a deep dive into research, and I talked to a lot of people I respected in a lot of different areas. And, I tried a lot of different things, and what really helped me change my reality and continues to allow me to level up and make goals and accomplish them no matter how crazy they are, and work on things in myself is these two practices of meditation and mindfulness. And it changed my life. It brought me from a place of hopelessness and ruin to being able to write a best-selling memoir about my life and get Aaron Sorkin to write an Oscar-nominated movie. I really attribute it to these practices. Here's the thing, though. We can't learn our way to a resilient and powerful mind, excellence, and high character. It's in the actions. Imagine someone who wants to be a surgeon simply listening to a talk or reading a book and then trying to operate. You don't want to be on that operating table. The secret is in the consistency of action. But if you incorporate these actions into your daily lives, and they don't take much time at all, you will become incredibly powerful. This is the work that nobody does. This gives you such an incredible edge. Because let's be honest, when you are the bravest, kindest, sharpest, most composed, most intuitive, and most resilient person in the room, my friends, you are dangerous. There is nothing and no one that's going to get in your way. So, this is it. This is the secret that I would have wanted to know at your age.
Thank you so much, Molly. That was so, so powerful. I think I talk to my friends all the time about the mind, right, and the brain. And the same way we work out and we train our bodies, like, you have to do the same thing with your brain. It's just another muscle that has to be worked. And so thank you for giving us practical tips that we can use in our daily lives to help us get over whatever we have that's holding us back, and then to take our power back, right? That was so good.
Yeah.
I took so many notes. Okay, so we'll go ahead and hop into the questions. And we'll go start with Tiffany. She's asking, She's saying that you're an inspiration to all the future girl bosses. Yes, you are. So her question is, if you could give your 16-year-old self advice, what would it be?
Oh, well, Tiffany is a good friend and she knows what I would say. It would be this. I think I just gave my whole spiel on it. I feel like if I would have known this at 16, I don't even know what the future would have held. It would have been 100x more successful and powerful. And, a really important part of that too is being able to enjoy the process and enjoy the journey. So many times we put so much pressure on ourselves that when we accomplish the things, it's not even enjoyable,
Yeah, I think that's huge. And if you didn't know, Tiffany was here with us on Tuesday, and so she wanted to get a question out to you. So that's a fun fact for our listeners. So, okay, we have another question. We have a video submission from one of our externs, and so we'll roll that for you now.
Okay.
Hi, Molly. My name is Karan, and I'm from Missouri University of Science and Technology. I watched your movie, I read your books, I am a huge fan. And I wanted to ask you today that when things are going bad, what do you tell yourself to keep going? Like to motivate yourself through it? Thank you.
So, the biggest sort of antidote to anxiety for me when it seems like things are really tough and things are getting scary is, they can't beat you if you never give up. And so I just have this constant reminder to myself that when you get tired, you can rest, but you just don't stop. Because if you keep going and you never give up and you keep pivoting and sort of finding different ways around it, then the world and its crises and its problems are no match for you. I mean, you outlast them, you outstand them.
That's really good. That continuous learning and shifting, right? So we have a question from Shannon asking, in today's society, success is often linked to fame and fortune. In your opinion, what are some of the pros and cons of this mindset?
Oh, wow. I love this question. I went out into the world thinking that if I could become famous and rich, then I would live the best life ever. And I also believed that people that were famous and rich were living the best lives. And I can tell you right now that both of those premises turned out to be completely false. I was around some of the richest, most powerful, most privileged people in the world, and I can count on this hand how many of them were happy. And also, when I was making all this money, it was great in the beginning because I held onto my values and my morals, and I was about, what my mom taught me, being a good person. But, this stuff started to really corrupt me. So if you don't have this really strong foundation, if you don't have this ability to be grounded and to have have good friends and be a good person, it's all for naught. I found those people at the top with all that money and all that influence. I found them to be some of the most unhappy people I've ever met in my life. And I also got to be the most unhappy I've ever been at the pinnacle of my success. And so I had to completely, rethink what success means to me and what does that look like. And I moved back to Colorado and I spend time in nature, and I'm very ambitious always, but the money and the power and the fame and all that stuff, like, it just doesn't interest me anymore. I would much rather have impact.
That's good. That's really good. Our next question is really a really powerful one too. So we have Farah who's asking, who has helped you the most throughout all of your setbacks that you experienced?
My mama, for sure. When I made all the mistakes that I made in my late 20s, early 30s, she was always there for me. And she said, I just wanted to be your safe place to land. She didn't judge me. She wasn't mad at me. She believed in me. When I told her, okay, well, I think the way out of this is to write a book and to get a really, like, one of the biggest screenwriters in the world to write the movie. When everyone else looked at me like I was insane, she was like, let's do it. I believe in you.
Our moms can always be some of our biggest support systems, right? They're easy to fall back on. Okay, so our next question is, how do you overcome imposter syndrome when surrounded by high achievers and find confidence in yourself?
So, this is a perfect example of how training your mind can fix this. So what happens now to me, right? I'm about to get on the AT&T Summer Learning Academy, right? I look at all these big names that are on here and I'm like, well, I'm like a convicted felon. Why am I teaching this class, right? The thoughts start to come. And because I have trained my mind for years and years and years, I just direct my focus and attention away from them, and then they go away. And I can put in things into my brain that, you know, I can pick new thoughts, which is, listen, you've made a lot of mistakes. You've got a lot of experience to share, you know, and it's this manual control over your thoughts that allows you to not participate anymore, not get hooked by imposter syndrome, not get hooked by the critical voice in your head. I mean, it's such a powerful tool to be able to have this flex and this control over your mind, because you can bypass all that stuff that doesn't serve you at all and doesn't help you to be successful. In fact, hinders that. So, I mean, again, I think when it comes down to it, train that mind.
It's like mind over matter is the theme, right?
Yeah.
So our next question
We're
is
gonna
from
become
Darren.
Jedi, you know?
Right. Honestly. So our next question comes from Darren. He says, thank you for speaking with us. He loved the movie Molly's Game. Wanted to ask, similar to your experiences, many of us will be entering professions where there are pretentious and powerful individuals. What advice would you share for working effectively with them?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. And I certainly do have that experience. So I think that there's a couple things here. First of all, it's a great practice for anybody to learn how to take things less seriously and less personally. Not an easy one, but a great one. So for me, what I would do is, I would put that on my list every day that I look at. Take the world less personally. And I would work on that. I would work that, because any place you go into, particularly if you're going to be dealing with big egos, and people who, you know, are maybe not the best people to interact with, it's going to be really important that you have a really solid sense of self and that you don't let other people deter you from your path. Now, I have a caveat here. If you're working in a place and people are abusive or hateful or racist or masochist, you know, if you're made to feel uncomfortable, we must stand up for ourselves. We must. But you know, for the rest of the stuff, it's a matter of doing this mental training, doing this mindfulness training, and moving the center of gravity within, being your own judge, not allowing the world to judge you, right? You're the judge. Am I being my best? Am I being honest? Am I being courageous? All these things. When you stay on top of yourself like that, you start to give less credence to what other people say, and you start to gain this confidence that nobody in the world can take from you.
Absolutely. We have a question related to poker. So what are some of the transferable skills that you have learned throughout poker playing and have applied to your own life?
Sure. There's a lot. I learned that fear and ego take people out more than anything. I learned that being able to stay rational and composed and logical when making decisions is so critical. I learned that in negotiations, you must not have fear, or you must not show fear. I learned the power of being able to walk away when it's just not your night or your day. You know, these people that try to exert their power over this random, uncontrollable sequence of cards lost all their money. So I would say those are the biggest takeaways.
That's good. So we have a question about what you're doing right now. So we've talked a lot about your past mistakes, but what is something you're doing right now that you absolutely love?
Yeah. So I have a startup that basically, I'm aware that these things that we ask, that are asked of us to change our brain and to, like meditation and positive psychology and habit building and discipline, they're all really difficult things to do. But I think when you apply game theory to it, it makes it easier, right? You look at a poker table. There's all these people, and when you strip away the game layer, what they're doing is just like simple math for hours and hours and hours. And so I have a startup. We're creating a studio that creates games that help people to adopt these behaviors so that they can change their life, become happier. Just it takes the kind of the laborious part of the work out of it and makes it an entertainment experience.
Sounds very interesting. Is that available now, or?
I wish. No, we're
Well,
building
I'm
it.
gonna look out for that because that sounds
for sure.
extremely helpful. Okay, so we have
I'm building it because that's what I would want. That's what I want. I want
exactly. I'm like, oh, that sounds like I need that.
Yeah.
All right. So we have a question from Caitlin, and she's asking, did you receive any backlash from the celebrities who attended your events once they heard about the book and movie? And I'll add to it and say, and how did you navigate that backlash as well?
Yeah, absolutely, I did. And I knew that I wasn't willing to throw people under the bus. The people that had admitted being in the poker games and talked about it freely, I exposed their names, but anybody who hadn't been exposed, I was very steadfast on not revealing those names and not telling any stories that would harm people, but they didn't know that. And so there was a lot of back channeling trying to stop the book from being made, and a lot of back channeling trying to interfere with the movie getting made. And it was hard at first with the book. That First Amendment really protects anyone's right to write a book, but with the movie, there's a lot of politics in Hollywood, and so I'd set things up and it'd fall apart, and I'd set things up and it'd fall apart, and I felt it in my gut in the same way that I felt I could ski again when I was 12 years old. I just felt like this could be successful, so I just kept going. I just didn't give up, and I just got more strategic and got smarter about the next time I tried to pursue it, and just kept going.
And I think that brings up an interesting point. You talked about, your athletics, and I think athletes have a certain mentality when it comes to work and everything that they do because you're competing, right? I was a competitive swimmer, so I know that rush you get when you're success. So I have a question and just wanted to know, how has your athletic training, because you were, Olympic qualified, and how did that help with your mindset and then even being able to train your brain?
Yeah. So with mogul skiing, it's a pretty scary sport. And you're constantly jumping off huge jumps and trying new tricks and skiing really fast through kind of a minefield of bumps. And there's a lot of fear involved. And if you want to compete well, if you want to be in the sport at all, you have to feel that fear, and then you have to do it anyway. And so this was a huge monumental experience to have early in life, because what you find is that, after you walk through that fear or ski through that fear, not only do you feel extremely powerful and triumphant, you also realize that you didn't necessarily need to pay full attention to the fear. Now, there are, like I said in my talk, there are times where I should have paid attention to fear. And there's fear that is rooted in trying to keep you alive and trying to keep you safe. And then there's just the sort of static of anxiety and fear. So learning how to walk through fears was a huge one. Learning how to lose way more times than you win and still stay at it was another one.
That's good. All right, we'll get back to our social media questions. We have one about cancel culture. So she's asking, in today's society with cancel culture mentality, how can you maintain a level of risk versus the possibility of a negative impact?
So this comes down to, for me, that second part that I was talking about, which is the mindfulness piece. And, you know, you establish who you are, right? You establish your values, and you stick to it no matter what. Now, you know, I can give you an example in my own life, right? So when I got in trouble with the feds, I sat down with the prosecutors and they said to me, if you are willing to give us these names, and if you're willing to give us this information that we're asking for, we will give you all your money back. Now the government took millions of dollars from me in asset forfeiture. And they also said, and we will make sure you don't go to jail. And if you don't give us this information, you're looking at 10 years in jail. Now, I had this list of who I wanted to be in the world. And, you know, I wanted to be courageous and I wanted to do the right thing. And this was the ultimate litmus test in my life to sort of test that. Do I take the easy way out and harm other people, or do I just face my fears and face these consequences because it's aligned with who I am? And that's what I chose to do. And I can tell you that when I sat down with Aaron Sorkin, the reason that he wanted to write that movie is because of that choice. So sometimes those hard choices and standing for what you believe in will not present the reward first thing, but life will even the score. And so I just so think we have to do the hard stuff and we have to stand up for what we believe in, even when it's scary, even when it's, you know, putting you at risk.
That was great, great response. So we have another question from Haley, and she's asking, do you have a particular quote that you reflect back on when you need more motivation when training your mindset?
So this is something that I started doing a long time ago. I have a little inspiration file in notes on my phone. It has, I think, the Serena Williams Nike commercial. It has some quotes. It has a movie scene, you know, just like this. It's just this information, like this inspiration central, so that when I start to when I need that shift, I can put that on. Music also does it for me. Huge. If you're feeling like you can't go on anymore and you put on like the 8 Mile soundtrack and go for a walk, I guarantee you it will shift you out of the, you know, the sort of like unmotivated thing. Another thing you can do is reach out to someone who you know is positive and who will support you. But so the answer is, do I have a specific quote? No, I have a lot of them, and I have these resources that I use when I need that extra push. And can I tell you, it's not social media. Social media makes me feel less motivated. It makes me feel less like I can do this, you know, like watching other people's curated, edited lives is not it. It comes from within, it comes from music, it comes from, you know, movie scenes or Nike commercials. Like that's where I source inspiration from.
Music is a big one for me. I'm a Beyonce fan, so I just put those tunes on and just pump myself up. Yeah.
It does something to you, you know? Yeah.
It really does. It really does. Okay, so we have another question. This person is saying that they love your story and movies so much, and they hope to be an author one day too. Their question is, how has being a woman shaped, negatively or positively, your experience as an entrepreneur and bestseller?
So, you know, I'm not going to tell you that being in business and being a woman is necessarily the easiest thing, but that's okay. right? Because that means it's even more important. It's even more critical that we move that needle. And you do it for yourself, and you do it for your sisters, and for other women that come before you and come after you. So here's what I'm going to say about being a woman and being an entrepreneur. Don't try to become your counterparts. Don't try to become like the other people that you see in the room. Lean into what makes you original. Lean into your experiences. That's what people are looking for. They're looking for fresh perspectives. They're looking for a difference in opinion and perspective. And I found, in poker, I could have done it the exact same way that all the guys were doing it, because there was only game runners that I ever came across were men, and they had this way of doing it. But I realized this is so much more than just poker. This is about building a community and an experience, and this is about tweaking all the details, from the way that the candles smell to the food that's on the table, to how much money the buy-in is. Like, I was just a detail-oriented person that looked at it from a much bigger zoomed out picture. And I also knew it was about relationships, and I knew it was about being a good person and a kind person and someone that was trustworthy. And that's what enabled me to monopolize this industry, even though I was coming from, a huge way back. So that's, yeah.
Good, and I think this next question will tie into that perfectly. It's about, growing up. So how did coming from a high-achieving family influence your attitude towards success?
It was hard to grow up with those two. And I love my brothers, and we're so close, but their skill sets presented from such an early age. It was just very clear that Jeremy was an absolute athletic phenom and Jordan was a genius. And so I sat at this table thinking, like, I'll never be the smartest or most talented person in the room, but I really wanted to matter. And so that's when I kind of developed this scrappy mentality that I'll just never quit. And I'm really happy, even though it was painful at times, to kind of feel invisible and feel less than and everything. I'm happy that I had those standards to live up to, and I'm happy that I figured out how to do it, not being the most talented or the smartest person in the room. Because what I leveraged, every single one of us have access to. And that is a really strong, resilient mindset that you can train and improve. And just this sort of scrappy attitude of, like, I'm just going to outlast everyone.
All right, so we have another question from our social media platforms. The question is, from your experience, how do you find out if you're going on the right path or when you need to change directions?
So this is such a huge plug again for meditation, because what happens when you start to meditate and you start to be able to quiet the noise in your head, and what I mean by the noise is the anxiety, the critic, the noise from what everyone else is thinking or saying, you start to quiet that, you start to hear the truth, and you start to tap into a deep knowing within that leads you in the right direction. This is my experience. This is not speculation. This is not like woo-woo talk. This is what happens. And it's logical when you think about it, because when you just, when you've got all that static going on, that anxiety and what are other people thinking and what if I fail and I'm scared and I'm not good enough, you can't see the truth. It's too busy. And so my advice is to do these things, to train your mind, to start to be able to sit and have a little quiet, because those answers are within you. I mean, there is a deep wisdom within.
Yeah, I think that's so good and so key. We have another question from Doreen, and she's asking, During your movie and your book, you focus on your familial and personal relationships. How did you maintain or rebuild those relationships, and how has it influenced your life?
Oh, that's a good one as well. So, I kind of touched briefly on how I started to change, how success started to change me. And my family didn't like what I was doing. They were worried about me and they wanted me to go to law school, or they wanted me to do something, sort of more aligned with what I wanted to do when I was younger, which was have impact. And it was something that matters, and so because they, were giving me pushback, I sort of stopped showing up for them. And I stopped, my old friends started to see that I was changing and I was becoming kind of just about money and materialism and all that stuff, which is fine, right? As long as we have our center and we're still people of substance and integrity and honor. But I started to not be that. And I pushed everyone away, and I ended up really alone and really spiritually, emotionally sick. And part of the sort of practice that I talked about, this mindfulness practice, I had to look at all those things and how I was showing up or not showing up. And I had to make what I would say is living amends, and make sure that I never bailed on the people that had loved me and were there for me and were kind for me. I had to be a better daughter again, and a better sister, and a better friend. And this was a critical piece of the redemption. It's being redeemable.
And I think that hit home, during quarantine and COVID, you have to depend on your family and friends virtually now. And I know a lot of people,
Right.
at least friends close to me, have been rebuilding relationships. That was very good. Very, very good. So you have another question. She says, would you say that you've already been at the top of your career? Are you currently in it, or do you think there's a bigger opportunity for you in the future?
Always a bigger opportunity. Always, always, always. Look, I've done the other things, right? I've made a lot of money. I got a little famous, but what I care about doing now and what I'm doing through building this game is being able to help people at internet scale, and if the company makes $1, if it makes no money, but if it helps people, that's the thing. Listen, I always want to be successful, and I always want to be financially set, because I've been on the other side of that, and it's terrible. And there's no power, no agency in it. So I don't want to discount the fact that I am a financially driven person, but my calculus of success and ambition now is really largely about how can I be part of a solution at scale, And look, if you can take a game, right, like Fortnite, and instead of having these activities where you're shooting people to level up or whatever, you can actually get people to do things that are good in the world or for each other. There's a huge opportunity to make a huge impact. And I know about gaming, I know about games. So I think this thing that I'm working on, I think this will be, I think it's a calling, and I think it's my life's work.
All right, well, that is all of the questions we have for now. And I just wanted to know if there was any last closing remarks you want to leave with the students before we close out our broadcast today.
I just want to say that I feel for you right now, just like I feel for all of us. There's a lot of uncertainty. There are a lot of things we don't have the answers to. And this is a great time to start to practice being okay with that, because this is an extreme version of not having control and not knowing the answers, but this is life. And if you can learn it now, if you can learn how to manage it now, and if you can learn how to find peace and clarity and happiness in the uncertainty, you're ahead of the game. And I really, I could have come on here and told you anything, but I told you, what I wanted to bring to you were these practices that can allow you to be okay no matter what is going on in the world, and to be successful and to be happy and to be, grounded no matter what. And so I really hope that you do this. I really hope you do these things. And I just think that you're all incredible and you're incredibly strong. And again, thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. I mean, what a great way to end out this broadcast and to leave our students with one last final tidbit before they go back to campus and we close out this program. So thank you so much for your time. We truly, truly, truly appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So thank you all for joining us. That was such a great conversation. I couldn't have picked a better speaker to close out the 4 weeks of Summer Learning Academy with all of the guest speakers that we've had. I think that training your mind for success is something that is not talked about enough, and I'm so glad that you all got those tips and tricks from Molly. Tomorrow morning, I'll be closing us out at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. We're gonna walk through some of the things that we've learned this week and unpack some of the things that I've taken away that hopefully will help you before you go back to school. So thank you all for being here today. Thank you all for being here for the past 4 weeks, and we'll see you for our close tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time.